Hello world, Lane here. I'm very excited to welcome you to the first episode of Humans of Aetherium. There are lots of really excellent podcasts and shows that do a good job of telling the technical or the economic side of the story in Ethereum. Humans of Aetherium takes a slightly different approach. As the name implies, it's intended to go a bit deeper into the human story, to explore the backgrounds and motivations of the people behind the projects and technologies. In the first few episodes, we'll be interviewing people who are doing very important, meaningful work throughout the Ethereum ecosystem, but work that's a little bit less well known than the people and projects we often hear about. We kick off in this episode with an interview with Austin Griffith, who should be very well known to many of you for the fantastic work that he's done on the Burner wallet, which Austin will tell you all about in this episode. One tiny update before we kick off. Since we recorded this episode a few days ago, Austin has had a slight change to his status. He'll no longer be working full-time as part of the Gitcoin team, which, if you ask me, is all the more reason for us to support the fantastic work that Austin's been doing on this project, and we'll include information in the show notes on how to do that. Without further ado, let's kick off with the first episode of Humans of Aetherium, featuring Austin Griffith. So I'm really keen to obviously keep this super casual, but just chat a bit and learn about some stuff like, kind of like your background and, kind of how you kind of got into doing the work you're doing and kind of what excites you. We'll talk a bit more about kind of broad trends in the Ethereum community as well. And I guess we're going to focus for the first few of these chats on folks like you, Austin, who are doing like really important, exciting, meaningful work in the community that in some way, shape, or form, no, we're the ones who should be thanking you, right? Emoji. So work that I think is somehow kind of underappreciated or undervalued or underfunded to some extent. And I really can't think of anyone better than you to kind of kick this whole series off. Really, I'm quite excited and quite honored to have a chance to chat with you about all the things that I just covered. So why don't we just dive in? Why don't you just start by telling us your own kind of story in your own words?
Okay, well, thanks for the kind words, and thanks for having me. I got in, probably must have been about a year and a half ago. I think I saw Ethereum on Hacker News, well, it might have even been longer than that, but it was kind of leading up to like when CryptoKitties got big. It was before CryptoKitties got big. It was kind of like NFTs were just getting invented. I made a few, sent some funds using a command line interface, and I was just hooked. It was like a goosebumps moment. And honestly, I still get those same goosebumps when I send funds today. So there's something about it. There's something about deploying a smart contract, interacting with the smart contract, the decentralized nature of it all. So I was hooked from the beginning. I learned everything I could. And then I started building, the first thing I thought we needed was like a decentralized oracle. So I started trying to figure out what a decentralized oracle would look like. And I probably spent like a month by myself working on that before I realized that, wow, this is bigger and probably in terms of game theoretical, like over my head. And I kind of came up for air, released what I had, realized that it wasn't going to be anything bigger than that. And then I went back down into the darks and I started building games. And I built this game called Gallias, which is like the ship game.
I remember seeing it. I think the first time you and I met, I think you pulled it up and showed it to me, and I was like,
yes, that's right. You had a fish. Cool. I gave you a fish sticker. For,
oh my God, I still have it. I'm gonna actually,
awesome.
I'm gonna show it to you. Actually, awesome. I know this is awesome. I'm totally like breaking the wall here, but where's my water bottle? Hang on one sec.
Okay. So for you watching at home, I built this like hand painted game that is like oil paints, and I kept going with my definition, my explanation.
Is this
that's it? That's the fish. Yep, that's one of the fish that you catch in the game. Yep,
dude.
exactly.
So I don't put stickers on my laptop. I put them on my water bottle just because I'm trying to be different, and because I change water bottles less often than I change laptops. And I don't know if you can see this here, right? But like I have multiple layers of stickers, but the fish is at the bottom layer, and it
was one of the first ones.
I routed around it because I like it so much.
So that fish is an ERC20 contract. It's also hand painted with oils, and you catch it using commit reveal in Gallias. And Gallias is like, it centers around NFTs, tokens, crafting, exploration, just a lot of really fun things. And there are a lot of neat things that came out of this. There's this idea that when I deploy my game, I deploy it, all the contracts and all the source code to IPFS, and it's almost like a fork of the game, which is really cool because when I would deploy a Facebook game, I used to make Facebook games, I would get like death threats. so in this case, if you don't like a new change or a new mechanic that I put in, you can follow the old fork, right? So lots of like neat things. And then also there's like this idea of sailing on the blockchain I like to talk about, because I like to kind of illustrate that in Web3 games, we need to find new creative reasons why to even use Web3, right? We're not trying to recreate Web2 games. We're trying to find why Web3 is powerful and use that. And so there's this sailing on the blockchain where movement is notoriously hard in a Web3 game because it's all on chain. But with this, you basically, you send a transaction to put up your sails, and then basically your ship travels its speed for each block that is mined. So you send it one transaction, and then your ship just sort of sails based on each block getting mined. And then the speed of that ship is based on how good of a craftsman built it, who's based on what you fed their parents. Like there's this whole like very complex thing there. And
that is like orders of magnitude more complex than CryptoKitties and a lot of the other kind of games we've seen on the blockchain. That's incredible. And you're like a one-man army building this stuff, designing and building it.
It's not time to wake up, buddy. You know? So there's two things that I learned here though. And one is basically that no one gives a shit, and you have to have ETH, and you have to have gas, and you have to have MetaMask. And I had a really hard time getting anybody on board. And the second thing is, same thing with concurrence, the decentralized oracle that I made. You need to be heads down for a while, but you need to come up for air pretty regularly and interface with the community. You need to get feedback from the community about what you're doing wrong, what you're reinventing. And so there needs to be more of an iterative process with the community, with everyone around you. Don't operate in a silo and assume that you're going to come out of that with a perfect product. You need to put it in the hands of users, put it in the hands of other developers, and kind of iterate as it's necessary. That's a light bulb, buddy. My 2-year-old just brought me a light bulb.
Yeah, we were chatting about this before we started the recording, but this is about the humans of Ethereum. So your son is definitely one of the, I guess, future humans of Ethereum. So
yes, I hope so. Yep. This is Gus.
Hey Gus, how's it going?
Yeah. Okay.
So that's super good advice. I think, like, I agree with you completely that we have this like persistent engineering mindset in Ethereum, which is kind of like we put our heads down and sit in the corner and like build cool stuff that maybe someday someone somewhere will like notice or care about. But actually, I think having that kind of a product mindset, right, where we have these like tight feedback loops with customers, we do that sort of customer needs analysis early on. I think that's super good advice. So thanks for sharing that. I want to rewind even further, if that's okay with you. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story, like kind of whatever is relevant, like kind of what did you study? What did you do before? What were you doing immediately before Ethereum? And like, I guess you kind of started this story, but kind of like, what was that moment for you that I call it the rabbit hole moment, when you kind of first stumbled upon or discovered all these things?
Okay, so working up toward the rabbit hole, basically, I got my master's in electrical engineering, and I worked in an engineering firm for a little bit, and they didn't have very good people skills, I'll say. And so I did a lot of people skills stuff. I found myself doing less and less engineering and more people stuff. And eventually I left that to run Facebook. I ran Facebook games. So I had a bunch of games that I built that ran on Facebook that I basically survived on for a long time.
So you were doing that as a full-time job. That's really, so you
for like a year and a half.
You're the poster child for like this, what do we call it? Kind of platform grade censorship resistance, like the need for that, right?
Interesting. Yeah, sure. Huh. Okay.
I don't know if you ever had issues, but just what I've heard about Zynga and other companies that had a business model built on Facebook games, you know, Facebook would come in and tweak some parameter or change their API, and like the entire business model would collapse. I guess that didn't happen to you.
Yeah, I was smaller and I was ahead of Zynga,
Okay.
and my stuff was like much lower. I built the games for the love of the game.
Right.
Same with Gallias. Zynga, I'm sure, did that, but they spent a lot of time figuring out, you know, how to hook people and what mechanics kept people paying. And I
Sure.
was more interested in building things that I love and giving those to people and seeing
Got
if
it.
they like.
Got it.
So there were some mechanics that did change on Facebook, but they weren't that bad for me. I mean, it
Okay.
was okay. Like it allowed me to survive for a year and a half with a PayPal account, right?
Wow.
So
Well,
that was yeah.
speaking of PayPal, there's another platform that people have had
Right.
censorship issues with, but hopefully that
Right.
wasn't an issue for you either.
Right.
Amazing.
No, not too
So,
bad.
so you were doing this games thing, and then so that was your kind of entry point to Ethereum, was actually games.
So it's what I love to do. I would say my Venn diagram is sort of like technology and creativity, but then like this third thing is like empathy. Like I love seeing people use something I've built, right? So there's like this empathy thing where it just like warms my heart to see someone play something or use some app that I've built. So if I can find some like really creative niche, apply some really heady technology, and then kind of have that experience of someone else using that product, that's my home run moment, right? So I built games for a long time, and then I was hired to build a cloud-based video encoding service. This is probably 2000. This is probably like Bitcoin white paper time, and so I had no idea about it. But then that led me to work here in Fort Collins at Madwire, a marketing company. But I helped developers build my microservices. So I built a layer on top of Docker that made deploying and scaling microservices way easier. And you didn't need to know the guts of Docker. You could kind of just say, create a PHP app with this database and I'll work on it locally, and now ship it out to this box, now ship it out to all, this swarm. And I still put in some hours now and then at Madwire, helping them sweep up some issues.
Cool.
So I'm not fully gone from there yet. And this piece of software, I really wish it was open source, but it's closed source and only there. So I still have to come in there every once in a while and patch an issue here and there.
Got it.
And then I surfaced and kind of I surfaced from basically the Docker world. I was really in Docker for a long time, really in DevOps and in infrastructure. And I surfaced and found Ethereum on Hacker News or something. And like we talked about earlier, I got on and kind of learned about, hey, this is how you send a transaction. This is what, I mean, like basically I found out about Ethereum, and that led me back to Bitcoin. And I learned how transactions work and how basically mining works and a lot of stuff there. And then that led me then kind of back to smart contracts and Ethereum. And it's been down the rabbit hole ever since, with just learning more and more about it.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that backstory. That's super interesting. And I definitely, there's definitely some kind of echoes in there of, I guess my own story. I think all of our stories kind of overlap and intersect in kind of interesting and beautiful ways. And it's a great segue into the next thing I wanted to ask, which is, what does Ethereum represent to you? Totally open-ended question.
Yeah. So for me, it's a lot more about the tech than the specific ethos. Like decentralization is cool, but I don't think everyone cares about decentralization, right? I think we do need decentralization. We need censorship resistance. We need to be able to have this property of no one can shut this down, no one can control this. This thing is like all of us together. But in another way, like my mom doesn't give a shit about that, right? So I want to be able to kind of find some middle ground, or even like what we talk about with the burner is sort of navigating this spectrum of decentralization and security, where maybe I could give you something on this end that's a little less secure and a little less decentralized, but it's a lot easier to use. I can teach you teach you about our specific ethos and how things work, and then kind of work you toward the decentralized end of things.
Got it. Okay, interesting. That's fascinating. And you are one of the people, if not kind of the individual human, I think, in the Ethereum community who is doing kind of the most important and most successful work on exactly that, kind of meeting people where they're at and holding their hands and how do I put it? Like focusing on things like usability, which I think as a community, we haven't done such an incredible job with to date, as a means towards, promoting our long-term kind of shared goal, which is decentralization. Now, of course, success is relative, there's hopefully some glorious future just around the corner where everyone in the world is using amazing software like Burner Wallet and all the other cool things we're building on Ethereum. Obviously, we're not there yet. But yeah, I mean, again, that's a great segue. Let's talk about what you're up to right now. So tell us about Burner Wallet. Tell us what the project is, what it's intended to do, any other kind of cool stuff you're working on right now. We'll just get caught up to the present.
Okay. Yeah, cool. So just a really quick backup, like basically post magic moment, I built a couple of games. No one could get on board to those games. I still hadn't gotten into the ecosystem. I wrote this Medium article, like my big break into Ethereum. And I talk about how I sort of just needed to start providing value to the ecosystem. Yeah. I needed to be more tapped in and figure out like, what do people actually need, and go build something for them. And I started just like following people on Twitter and figuring out where they were having problems or what they were up to. And like do you remember Nick Johnson's like the gas golfing?
Of course. Yeah, for sure. That was
he said is there an API out there or a server that will compile contracts for me? Mm-hmm. And I was on vacation in Austin, Texas with my wife, and I was like, I will build that thing for you tonight. And I basically built that thing. Like my wife went to sleep and I stayed up and built that thing for him, just to kind of like, basically my new idea here is I just have to provide value, right? Sure. And I did a lot of little projects like that, where it was just like, this is the thing you need, here, like use this thing. I spun it up on my AWS, I'm paying for it. You just use it and let me try to provide value, right?
And at the time you still had a day job, I guess, that was totally unrelated. So this was all just kind of nights and weekend stuff. Amazing. I love that hacker hackathon mentality. Like, let's just throw some stuff against the wall and see what sticks.
Exactly. And crypto Twitter kept leading me down these paths of, okay, well, what about, I think Kevin Owaki posted the difference between a user paying $0 and paying $0.00001 is immense, because it means they have to have ETH, they have to have gas, they have to know what gas is, they have to have MetaMask, and that difference is huge. So that's when I started, kind of in combination with knowing that onboarding was awful with my games, I started focusing on meta transactions and how we can just sign messages and have those signed messages go on chain through a relayer. The relayer gets rewarded somehow through different economic states, but basically the user doesn't have to know about it. He can just sign something and be done with it. And it's still cryptographically backed and it goes on chain.
Super important, super exciting topic. I'd actually love to drill down a tiny bit and just back up a tiny bit. And would you mind just from a high level, maybe for folks who haven't heard of this before, like what is a meta transaction? How does it work?
So there's this really cool function inside of a smart contract called EC Recover. And EC Recover says, give me this message and this signature, and I'll tell you who signed it. And that property, basically the fact that you can take a message and a signature and see who signed it, means that you can on-chain do a lot of really neat things with nothing more than a signed message. So off-chain, going back to the very beginning, a user signs the intent to do something. I would like to send, so the new multi-collateral DAI is a good example of this. New multi-collateral DAI will respect signed messages. It will respect meta transactions. So I can have 5 DAI sent to me, and I can just sign a message that says, I would like to send 2 DAI to Lane, and I can broadcast that to some kind of relay network. And we, thanks to the gas station network, we have decentralized meta transaction relayers, as ridiculous as that sounds. I would basically just send this signed message, like very Web 2.0. I sign a message and I send it somewhere with my key pair. I don't have to have gas. I don't have to have ETH. I don't have to understand anything. I don't have to wait for blocks to be mined. I basically just pass this message off to someone else. Someone else takes this signed message and wraps it up into a real transaction and puts it on chain, presents it to that contract. Then that contract does the EC Recover on it, finds that I signed it, and then does something on behalf of me. And if that miner tries to change, he said he's signing this to send $2 to Lane, I'm going to change it to $200, then that signature breaks down and it doesn't work. So
Got
it's
it.
still cryptographically backed. It's
Got it.
still deterministic. It still goes on chain. You interact with a smart contract, but kind of through a relayer that pays the gas
Got
for
it.
you.
That's
So
interesting.
that
That's
was kind of
actually
my big break. No, go ahead.
that's super helpful. I am aware of meta transactions, but I haven't taken the time to sort of fully understand the mechanism, and that actually helps my understanding, and I hope helps other people as well. So just to be clear, the message that the kind of originator is signing is not itself a valid Ethereum transaction. It's some sort of just kind of encoded data format, some specific thing that can be interpreted by a smart contract on chain. That's really
Absolutely.
clever.
That's exactly right. Yep.
So
Yep.
amazing.
So I basically, so along the way, as I was building these games, I also built Clevis and Dapparatus. I would go to these hackathons and I would find myself continuously building these same pieces just to get ready to build the thing I needed to build. So I always, I liked Truffle, but I didn't find it to be super intuitive. So I kind of built my own lower, like MVP Truffle, which is just basically a wrapper around SolC that does a lot of things with compiling, deploying, testing, orchestration, but then it injects your contracts into Dapparatus, which is my component library. So I started by doing screencasts about Clevis and Dapparatus, where with one keystroke, you can have all the scaffolding to build a dApp. You can quickly just focus on what you want your application to look like. You can sort of in Symfony build up your contracts while you're building up your UI, right?
Cool.
Like you build the function that's called this, you build the button that calls the function, you see that it works all in Ganache. So I'm already screencasting about how to build dApps quickly, still not into the space yet. But it like perfectly segued me into, okay, now I'm gonna do a screencast about meta transactions and how to do this really cool signed message thing. So my videos that were getting like 3 viewers, all of a sudden got like 30 viewers or 60 viewers. And for me, that was huge. And that led to my big break into Ethereum, where basically that got the attention of enough people, in particular, Kevin Owocki, and he said, we got to bring you on to Gitcoin as the director of research, and we're going to have you continue to do this R&D that you're basically doing nights and weekends. We're going to bring you on full time and have you do those things just for the community, continue to screencast, like these kind of bi-weekly projects. And I had been, it's funny, at the marketing company, I was already doing Bowtie Fridays. Like we're nerds and we don't really dress up. And so I would always like throw a bow tie on. So like basically almost back to the, the yellow paper, white paper days of Ethereum. I've been rocking Bowtie Friday, but no one knew about it.
I was actually going to ask if you wanted to wait until, I think today's a Wednesday, if you wanted to wait until Friday to do this so we could both wear bow ties, but I guess we could do a follow up on another Friday.
Yeah, exactly.
So for folks who are not
kind of
familiar,
go ahead.
Were you doing videos like regularly on Fridays, I guess, right? I remember the first time I saw you doing one of these walkthroughs, one of the meta transaction walkthroughs, I saw the bow tie. I just kind of shook my head. I was like, this is amazing. And other people have signed up to do it as well now. I've seen videos with, I think was it Matt or someone else?
I've definitely seen some more bow ties showing up. And it's funny because I think Bowtie Friday is actually a thing. Like if you Google it, there's other people doing it. And it's funny because it's the same theme that I had, where it's like, I don't ever dress up, so I'm going to start like bow tying up on Friday.
Right. I get it.
But
it's
basically
like
that would be
so corporate people dress down on Fridays, so crypto people can dress up on Fridays. I get it. Okay.
Exactly. So I would basically lay the groundwork, get a bunch of do some research, write an article, and then I would kind of screencast on top of that on Friday to kind of show off the work that I had done. So there's a weekly podcast or weekly screencast for me about the latest thing that I'm working on, and that's sort of my entry into Ethereum.
Amazing. And we will, so assuming this actually becomes something like a show or a series or something, which I hope it does, at least on YouTube, we'll include links to some of the projects you mentioned and some of those videos as well, so folks can see those for themselves, because they shouldn't be missed.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. And then you joined Gitcoin. So I guess just take us up to the present, right? So what are you up to at Gitcoin, and what is the status in particular of Burner Wallet? Like, how did that come to be?
Okay. Yep. So basically Kevin picked me up. He said, you got to do this weekly thing. What would be great is if you could figure out token subscriptions. That's kind of my lead into working at Gitcoin. And that weekend I was playing around with how we could use meta transactions to within a meta transaction, like you said, there's like this set of signed data. It's not an actual transaction, but there's like usually a to and a from, and what else is in there is a nonce, so it can't be replayed. So I can't take this signed message and multiple relayers, put it on chain, and send the value twice, right? So you have replay protection built into a meta transaction. Well, what we figured out is, well, what if we like manipulated that replay protection and let you actually purposefully replay a meta transaction, and maybe like once a month, right? So you can sign a single message that says, I want to send 5 tokens to Lane.
Right.
And that single signed message can just live somewhere else or within some kind of a network.
Sure.
Each month it becomes valid again and can be replayed. So you basically set it and forget it, and that thing will replay for as long as you want. And what you can do is you can still control it by setting approvals using the ERC20 standard.
Right.
So I'm gonna do one on-chain transaction that allows Netflix to take up to $100, and then I'm gonna sign a transaction, a meta transaction that says Netflix can have $7 a month, and it's just gonna replay forever. And that became Gitcoin grants. So Gitcoin grants and basically also the LEET standard. The LEET standard is more advanced. Gitcoin grants runs on this token subscription thing.
And it's
we
called,
also won the Wyoming
standard because it's, what is it, ERC 1337 or something, is that
exactly.
right?
Yes, exactly. Yep. So that's
I think I have a sticker for that on here somewhere as well, but it may be buried.
Exactly. So you could even do like delegated execution. You can do all sorts of heady stuff with the LEET standard, but this was the Gitcoin grant stuff was like a small piece of this. It was token subscriptions. Then we moved on to, I did like commit reveal, I did a Moloch sandbox, I did counterfactual instantiation. And so counterfactual instantiation is a perfect example of like where I'm like the self-proclaimed everyman of Ethereum, where it's like, if I can't figure it out, if like it doesn't intuitively make sense to me, then we need to do some work around it and we need to figure it out, because there's a lot of like me's coming into the space. Like we're not like these heady 10 out of 10 researcher dudes.
Sure.
We are everymen that kind of like, you know,
every man and every woman.
That's right. Every woman.
Every human.
Of course. Every human. Yes, I am an every human. And this is the every humans of Ethereum.
I think we just landed on a hashtag for this series.
I think so. Every human. Yeah. That sounds like mass adoption at the same time too.
Exactly. I love that.
But basically, yeah, just a typical person should be able to like pick this up. And when someone says counterfactual instantiation, it's really hard to understand what that really means. And so I tried to spend some time unpacking that and showing both in code examples how it works, but also kind of explaining in very layman terms what this really means. And so that was before Create 2. Now we have Create 2 and it's a lot easier to do this kind of stuff, but you could do these kind of things sort of, you know, this kind of predictive deployment stuff and off-chain stuff before Create 2. But so again, we would go through these weekly things, and then eventually we landed on, so before I even started working at Gitcoin, I showed up at DevCon. I kind of, on the flight there, I had been talking to Alejandro and, what is it, Open Money Initiative? Yeah. Those guys, they're trying to figure out, they're trying to figure out how to kind of get decentralization where it's needed most, like places like Venezuela, and they're trying to build a wallet. But the thing is, Venezuela's stuck in like 2010, so you have to build this wallet that works on these like old phones. And so that's where and my idea was like, let's build this in a wallet and let's put everything right in the browser. And he kind of took a different route, and he is building and has built, I think, this really like lightweight wallet that runs on Android 4.2 or something like that. And I kind of took it a different direction, and I used my tech stack to just quickly hack together this send and receive wallet. And just then XDAI had come out from POA, and it was like kind of like this burner network where it was fast and quick, but it was kind of like with validators. So you trade off some security, you trade off some decentralization, but you get good quick transactions that are cheap. So I kind of paired these two ideas of, let's create a wallet in the browser and then run it on this fast network. And at DevCon, I showed it to a few people where it's just basically like a QR code, which represents my address, and a send button and a balance. And that was the whole thing.
I'm gonna pull it up on my phone right now just because it's
Do you still have the old one?
Old one. Is there a new one?
Well, yes, there's a new one now, but I mean, back in the DevCon days, before
So
I
I'm
even
just
started working
pulling
at
up. Yeah, so you can see it loading. I just
Yep,
typed in
yep,
xdai.io. Is this
right.
the old one? Is there a new one that I haven't seen yet?
No, no, this is basically it. This is it. Look at, you have $9 on there too.
Yeah,
Yep, exactly.
I'm an xdai whale.
Yes.
And right, so this is, I guess this is a valid public address on xdai network. So anyone watching this can scan this and send me
Yeah,
some
here, let
xdai.
me do it. Actually, let's do it a little differently. So this is cool.
Yeah.
You can send and receive. No, no, do this. Hit the request button.
Yep.
So what we also found is you could create a pop-up point of sale system,
Okay.
right? So if you hit request, it's gonna have two inputs. You can put in an amount and then what you're, so maybe like 5-cent hot dogs or something
Yep.
like that, right?
Yep.
Basically, you wanna set up a store. And historically, this has been not that easy to just accept crypto and be able to do this in a quick way and set up like a point of sale system. So if you set that up, and then I'll be a patron of your store.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we can kind of show a demo live. But anyways, back in the day, we had just a QR code, and I walked up and I showed a few people, and there were these magic moments where people who had historically been in crypto, the crypto initiated people, they're sending around crypto with their phones with a simple scan in 5 seconds, right? And there's this magic moment where when I explain what it is, everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah. But when they experience it, it's something different. And that's what it was about.
I had that moment. That's what I call the inception moment. And it's amazing, right? Because when I saw this for the first time, which may have been, it probably was at DevCon. This was DevCon 4, right? This was last year, I think, right? So not quite a year ago.
Yep. In Prague.
Yeah, exactly. I joined the community in 2017. So I was, I'd been in for well over a year, and I've been using other wallet software, and it was an inception moment for me. It was just like, it was a moment when I got a glimpse of what we're capable of and what potential all of this has to work together if we can get over some of these like obstacles like usability, right? And I immediately thought of the work that Alejandra's team is doing, and thought about, every human around the world, like having one of these things on their phones and being able to exchange value. And it really is, I mean, if you haven't tried Burner Wallet, like please do. Open xdai.io in your mobile web browser. There's no, as Austin was explaining, there's no like process of generating keys or backing up recovery phrases. I mean, what I do actually is I reveal the QR code for the private key and take a screen grab, which gets uploaded to my Google Photos, and then that's effectively a backup. But even if you don't do that, right, you describe this as just being like cash, right? So it's $5, $10, something like that. That's not the end of the world if you God forbid lose your phone, or if your browser cookies get wiped or something, and then it's instant. Right? Then you can instantly, someone else can do the same thing. You can scan the QR code. And so I've, as you know, gone on to demo this for a number of, quote unquote, non-rabbit holers as well. Yeah. And it just blows people's mind when they see it for the first time, because you're just shortcutting, you're skipping all the annoying KYC AML steps, all the, all those obnoxious kind of on-ramps.
And the paper wallet was kind of a trick there, and we'll get into the cypherpunk speakeasy. Cool. We're almost, in terms of time, we're almost to the cypherpunk.
Okay, so keep going.
can we do a little transaction over the video here? So will you hit the request? Will you request 5 cents for hot dogs?
Yep.
If you,
so now
like,
I just show this.
Similar, you just show that to me.
Let's try it. Let's see if the resolution's high enough.
Yep, I got it. No, I got it. So so basically my page says, do you want to send 5 cents?
So if I leave my balance visible here, I think you might see it update in real time, right?
Yep.
So I'm just going to hold this up here.
I'm sending. Yep, we're going to see yours update to 909. There it goes. Yep.
That is incredible.
You can see I have a receipt, and if you look down below your QR code there, you're going to see a little transaction history.
Yeah, I see.
So now, as a shopkeeper, you can see that I just bought this, and you can hand me my Every Human, and I have purchased something from your store. Yeah. So with one basically you type in xdai.io, you have a wallet, you hit one button, now you have a POS system.
Incredible.
And I walk up and I hit one button and I scan and I buy that from you. So
I mean, really, I just have to take one more moment. I promise this is the last time. Like just to take a moment and pause and appreciate how important this is, that this is possible, and just celebrate, because this wasn't possible even 1 year ago, before this project was conceived of. And okay, Austin, obviously this speaks in great volume to, your own creativity and the work you've been doing, but equally it speaks to the power of Ethereum and all the stuff that needed to be built in order for this to be possible in the first case, right? So to me, and you've heard me say this before, this is like the pinnacle of, as I said, kind of what this technology should enable every human to be able to do. So this is why I think the work you're doing is so important. So, sorry, carry on.
So Boulder, we had a meetup. We wanted people to use crypto. The whole point was people using crypto.
Yeah.
What we did was we had them they had to buy crypto at the door, and then they would use the crypto to buy beer at the bar. And there's kind of like this cognitive disconnect of, if I have cash, why don't I just buy the beer at the bar?
Right.
And so I showed Brian the burner wallet, and it's obvious that like use the burner wallet here because this makes sense. But until the next week that we realized that wallets were the way to go. So we had to come up with this disconnect of like why you can spend cash here, but you couldn't in the other rooms.
So you were telling us about a time that you took burner wallet, I guess the first time, right? Like to a bar. Oh, you have paper wallets. Okay, cool. Cypherpunk Speakeasy. Cool. Let's pick it up there.
Cypherpunk Speakeasy is what we called it. So
we need that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, we do, for sure. Yes, and it's kind of like these like anon like speakeasy chicks. Anyways, we needed before the paper wallet, we had this Cypherpunk Speakeasy. And you would, in one room, you would buy crypto with cash, and then in the other room, you would use the crypto to buy beer. And there's definitely a cognitive disconnect there, where it's like, why don't I just buy the beer with cash?
Sure.
So we had a threshold where when you pass through it, you're in 2040. And in 2040, cash is hyperinflated.
Brilliant.
And we thought of this like the morning of, like at the event, we're like setting up this like an hour, and I'm the everyman. I'm the UX guy. I'm saying, people are going to be super pissed to go through this bad UX. So we're going to have to frame it in a way that makes it okay. So you could buy crypto in one, and you could still buy beer at the bar in cash.
Right.
Except it was like $2.5 million for a glass of wine and $2 million for a beer.
Inflation. That's smart.
Inflation. Exactly. So the banks had shut down. Credit cards didn't work. You could still buy with cash, but it was hyperinflated.
Amazing.
So that was the speakeasy. And the problem was there was this pretty bad experience of having to buy crypto with cash. Some people wanted to buy ETH. Some people wanted to buy Bitcoin. A small percentage of people were okay with XDAI. And that was the quickest and easiest thing to do. And this is kind of where we debuted for the very first time using the burner wallet. And this was kind of in the back of our minds. We were thinking maybe we could use this at ETH Denver. And this night in Boulder sort of proved it to us that we could use this at ETH Denver. And so that's what these events were about, is, okay, let's emulate the exact process of what it's going to be like at ETH Denver. So the next night, so we did this 6 weeks in a row, one per week we did this. And we went to a different bar every time. And I just have like brewer buddies or buddies that own bars. So I was able to kind of find them up here in Northern Colorado.
That must be a Colorado thing.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone is either a brewer or a rock climber or a mountain biker.
Or all of the above.
Right. Or all of the above. Exactly. Being an electrical engineer, I have an automated brewing rig in my garage.
We'll do a separate episode on that next time.
Yes. It's like all these solenoids, and it basically brews beer automatically, like while I sleep. And there's like a camera on it, and everything is like gauged. Wow. So when the beer comes out, the label actually shows exactly the process to make it, like every single temperature along the way, exactly the grains that went across the scale. Okay, that's a tangent.
We need to hook that up to a blockchain and turn it into a DAO, but let's come back to that. Keep going.
Oh, a DAO where people like are voting on flavors. Right? Oh, that's so good. Yes. So the basically these 6 weeks were for us to fine tune our UX. Mm-hmm. And one piece of the UX was people having to buy crypto. So what we did was create paper wallets. So a paper wallet on the inside is actually a private key. Yeah. You just point your phone's camera at this, and boom, you have a wallet with tokens in it.
So what this will do is it's a magic link to a burner wallet that will basically load that private key up, something like that.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
And it comes preloaded. And then the corresponding public key, right, it's preloaded with funds, basically. Yeah, okay.
And instead of preloading it with XDAI, we actually deployed an ERC20 on XDAI. So then you have like basically these shit coins that we have minted that allows us to print 100 of these, but only use 30 of them and not lose any money. At the end of the night, the bartender has an iPad that basically is set up like you hit that request button and you had your store, right?
Yeah.
So that iPad at the end of the night has a certain amount of money on it, and I just hand her some cash and say thank you for hosting us.
Got it.
And basically we iterate.
So that token, so you spin up a new token specifically for this event, and I love that you called it a shitcoin, and then basically it's a one-off thing, and then the token just kind of goes away afterwards. And this is so obviously this is some foreshadowing, right, into what happened at ETH Denver and ETH New York, I think, as well, right?
Yes, exactly. So
and Ethereum.
Yep. At each of these events, we minted and we changed it from shitcoin to local coin. I think Rich from MakerDAO put a better twist on this, since we started calling them local coins, which then kind of opened up this door of like, well, maybe this is like a local economy, and it's not just you're buying from this one bartender, but all of these people can be transacting on this value that has like this ephemeral value for now. So each week we iterated on the process. We watched where eyes went. We watched where thumbs went. We watched for problems and edge cases, and we just really patched all of those things up. So then by the time we got to ETH Denver, the wallet was on a solid coin. A participant would basically get that solid coin, hit it with their camera. They would have a wallet. Then they could walk up to the food trucks and scan a QR code and buy food. And it was a pretty seamless experience. I would say that like 80% of the people just had the happy path and it just worked, and they all had this magic moment. But I was pacing the food trucks for the other 20%. People using specific browsers that wouldn't allow access to their camera, people not even knowing what to do with the QR code, kind of just like grumpy people here and there.
Hey, 80% is pretty incredibly high from a kind of product or UX perspective. So that's exciting. I only want to ask one technical question about it, which I think would help people who may not, again, already understand how it works, which is, again, just take a second to explain what kind of what XDAI is, right? What is this kind of proof of authority network, and how does that enable all of this?
I think it's like proof of autonomy or something like this. I don't even exactly know what the A is. And I know that Igor is transitioning it to more of a DPoS system. So it's an exact copy of Ethereum, and he can kind of like tweak and play with the consensus mechanism, which gives us, like, Create 2 was deployed there weeks before Create 2 hit mainnet, right?
Got it.
So it's kind of like this burner network where it's like a test net of value, where the whole market cap is like 25K. So you don't have to, and you don't really want the market cap to be huge, right? Like you want to get in, do lots of quick transactions, do a bunch of stuff on chain, and then get back to the Ethereum network.
Yeah, so I would argue this is one of the few practical kind of working examples of kind of scalability as layer 2 in Ethereum, right? And so what you're doing, so we didn't talk about this part, is that you're actually moving real DAI from Ethereum mainnet over to this, I'm just going to call it a side chain, right? As you're saying, you kind of do fun stuff with it, and then you can move it back over a bridge. And you can, all that functionality is in the wallet as well, right?
Yep, exactly. That was one thing that was important to me, is to have the exchange built natively into the burner. So you don't have to like go to the bridge. You don't have to go to Uniswap. All of those things exist right here so you can go from ETH to DAI, and then from DAI to XDAI. And then if you're running on like BuffaDAI, or you're running on a local coin, there's one more step up there, and you go from XDAI into the token. And the token is basically just like the wrapped Ether contract. So basically you have Ethereum, and then you have an ERC20 that lives on Ethereum. And then you wrap up that, you lock up that ERC20 on mainnet Ethereum, and it's this bridge that is basically the validators that are validating blocks on XDAI.
They're basically just running, they're also running an Ethereum full node, right? And so they're able to move to validate transactions on both sides and move it back and forth.
They're also acting as a bridge, and they're watching for that lockup to happen on the mainnet. And then after 8 blocks, they're minting you some XDAI, and XDAI is actually Ethereum, but on a side chain.
Got it.
So when you would spend, so to deploy a smart contract right now, if I paid 1 gig away, do you say Gwei, gigaway? Where are you at?
I say Gwei because it sounds cool. And also when I first saw it, I didn't realize that it stood for gigaway. I thought it was its own unit. So I just like calling it Gwei.
Okay. So
Gwei, I'll share a fun fact. Gwei means ghost. Okay. Gwei means ghost in Chinese. So that's another reason I like it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Or turtle.
Or turtle.
So ghost,
different dialects?
Different tones. Ghost turtle is like Gwei or Gwei. I don't remember. Yeah.
Okay. Gwei. Ghost turtle. Okay, so let's see, where are we? Oh, so say you spend one Gwei to deploy a
Yeah.
contract on Ethereum, it's
Yeah.
going to cost you 0.00001 ETH, which comes out to being, maybe it costs you a couple bucks to deploy a smart contract on Ethereum. Well, with XDAI, it's pinned to that DAI, so it's pinned to the dollar. So when you deploy a contract on XDAI, it's exactly like Ethereum. You basically just change your RPC node.
Yeah.
It's $0.00001 to deploy that contract.
Right.
So now you can deploy like 100 or 1,000 contracts for a penny. So
and
all of it. Go ahead. Yeah.
So it's not gasless. It's just the gas cost is also pinned and is very, very, very low, right?
Yep. And we do some gasless transactions. If you notice in your burner wallet, there's a link button. If you were to send money in a link, and you could just basically like roll, say $5 up into an escrow contract, which is just a link. And you send that link to someone over like WeChat or something like that.
Right.
They follow that link. It's going to take them to a burner wallet.
Right.
It's going to generate their private key. And then they're not going to have any money in that private key.
Which
so
is
that's
part of
where
the
they
problem in the non-burner wallet case, right?
Yep. So then you basically sign a meta transaction that says, hey, I'm this person that this link is sent to.
Right.
And you sign some sort of secret that won't allow front running.
Right.
And then you send it to a decentralized meta transaction relay network. And then, yeah, thank you, Gas Station Network and Sabupi and my dude Yoav Weiss. And they basically I'm me as the dApp developer, the burner wallet developer, I've staked some funds behind recovering or running these. So then I pay for a relayer to submit that transaction, and basically you claim the funds. So there is some gasless stuff, but it's like in a strange edge, right?
That's amazing. So
anyway,
there's a lot going on under the hood here. Just share one thing. So I heard the number, right? The cost, the total cost, and I guess mainnet gas from ETH Denver of, tell us how many thousands of transactions it was and what that final cost was after 3 days.
So it's really funny when someone says, why didn't we do this before? Because it was a really fun, the experience of ETH Denver, of buying food trucks, that you just couldn't do it before because no one was willing to, we were all kind of maxis about our decentralization, right? This is like navigating that spectrum. So once we looked at this side chain, once we put the private key in local storage for small amounts of money, all of a sudden it opened up this new wallet, this new local coin, this new experience. So you were able to, at ETH Denver, buy 4,405 meals at the food trucks. We off-ramped about 38K in DAI to the food trucks Coinbase or Wire accounts, I think. It was through SendWire. $38,000 basically off-ramped, and the entire cost to run the entire event, all the transactions summed together, was 20 cents.
That's incredible. I mean, that really, in a nutshell, to me, again, just speaks to kind of how powerful this idea is and how much exciting stuff can be done, with the caveat that, like you said, you have to kind of take a step back from kind of decentralization maximalism. But I mean, in the context of this sort of event, and looking at the whole
$10,
picture,
it's $20.
That's incredible. Listen, we could talk about this for 2 more hours. I'm sure it's like such an exciting project, but it's so important as well that we talk about the context of your work, right? So what I really want to talk about, or hear you talk about, is like, I mean, really just like, what are your thoughts around business model? Do you have a plan for one? And basically just tell us how you've like funded this work to date, or to what extent you've been able to do that, and what you're thinking about doing going forward.
So, obviously I have to thank Gitcoin for having me as the director of research. That basically has funded me.
But just to be clear, they're funding you. They're not funding Burner Wallet specifically, right?
Right. Yes.
So you're being a hero, and you're doing this project basically in your own spare time.
It's sort of, well, like this was part of my R&D, right? Like it was kind of, I mean, like I don't have any spare time because I'm doing this all the time, right?
We all are.
right. My son is right over there playing with a Duplo helicopter while I'm doing this. Yeah, I uh, I am spending too much time on this right now for sure. I think that it is very much a boats all rise kind of
Yeah,
ecosystem play. I think a lot of my work is focused on that and not revenue, and I think that that is sort of transitioning. So with Gitcoin and with Consensus 2.0 and crypto winter, there's been a new focus on, let's put a revenue lens on this.
sure.
And I can put a revenue lens on the burner wallet. I can say, well, if everybody's using it, we can charge a percentage on the ramps. If maybe we need to focus on the service level stuff, I could charge to have the burner wallet at an event. But I mean, like I was on a call earlier today with the Wyoming Hackathon, and I listed off all the really cool things we could do. And I'm like, so what's our budget? And he told me $0. And it's like, well, okay. So, right. So there's like, that's just how it's got to work, right? Like for me to get to the burner wallet out there, and for me to get the kind of endorsements and also just get the word out, I kind of have to do it for free, right? And so Consensus and Gitcoin has funded me to keep doing this research, but it doesn't really fit the model anymore. The R&D was more like Consensus 1.0,
Sure.
and so now I'm kind of like trying to figure out how to basically like fund my work with grants, and that is my work both with burner fundamentals, but also kind of out on the edge of cool stuff I want to explore, right? I think that 2019 being the year of the DAO, I would love to build a game that is sort of like this open-ended game where like there's a set starting mechanics, and then there's like a victory condition, and then everyone who is playing sort of buys in and participates in this DAO where they vote in new mechanics, and eventually you get to the victory condition. So we kind of play around with governance, we play around with participation in governance, we play around with onboarding and games and a lot of other cool things. But like kind of this still this idea of like iterate quickly, small amounts of skin in the game, but not millions of dollars. And so there's like the burner collective or burner wallet collective to kind of push forward. There's just things like if you go to the exchange right now that I was showing where it was like you could move from ETH to DAI, there's no QR code scanner there. It's obvious that should be there. That should be a ticket, and I guarantee that is a ticket, but there's like 150 issues in the repo right now. And so
and it's just you, and this is a part-time job, or I should say it's not even a part-time job. It's just a passion project for you right now.
Right. Well, I mean, like, yeah.
So
it's sort of like I'm getting a paycheck now, but it's quickly deteriorating, and I need to figure something out. Yeah,
totally understandable. So I have to ask the burning question, no pun intended. Like, why not just throw up a Gitcoin bounty for this? Or
so there is.
So how is that going?
So there's a Gitcoin grant running on the LEET standard that is up, and I think that it has generated like a total of $6,000, which is awesome. Like $6,000 is not something to shake a stick at.
Sure.
And I think this is something that maybe we should explore a little bit. I'm an old dog. Like being the everyman, I'm also an old guy. I can't live on a couple $1,000s a month, right? Like I have a son, I have a family, I have a pregnant wife. Like I need health insurance. So we as an ecosystem, we don't really we don't really do a good job of bringing in those like 6-figure developers, right? We bring in the nights and weekend guys, and we bring in
we've done a great job of bringing in the nights and weekend guys, but as a lot of people listening to this probably know, like I've been struggling with a lot of these same questions myself. Austin, you and I are both the old guys here.
And it's tough because like if you could bring someone in at even like 150K, you're gonna attract a lot of great talent. But we're not doing that. We're saying, we'll give you $5K a month to run with this idea for 3 months, and that's if you're lucky, which is great. But that doesn't pay for health insurance and a mortgage.
We live in an expensive country. We live in expensive cities by global standards. I guess the kind of maybe sort of last question I want to explore with you is like, what does it take to get there, right? Like, I think we can agree that the problem is as it is. And we can also agree that it's just early days, for Ethereum and for blockchain and for all these exciting things we're talking about. And, there's a lot of noise about public versus private funding and, private funding supposedly works for Bitcoin. So maybe it'll work for Ethereum at some point. I usually push back on that and say, sure, it works in an efficient market, but, maybe the market's not efficient enough. But I just want to hear from you, just, close your eyes, paint a picture for us. Like, what does that glorious future look like and what has to change to get there?
I definitely have like these like time machine moments. Like I'm in the shower and I'm thinking about like what if I was there like in the yellow paper days and
Sure.
I just put $100,000 into this thing and now I was a billionaire. What would I do? And
You'd
so
probably be driving. You'd probably have a fleet of Lambos and probably some boats.
not at all. No.
I'm joking.
Honestly, almost everything would be the same, but I would be a lot less stressed out.
Yeah.
But the key is basically, I think I would be able to push these tools that I'm building farther, and I would be able to focus on an academy where the tools have a lot of resources behind them, where I can basically pay someone for their efforts at first.
Right.
And I think that's key. Like if you are willing to get in and you're willing to like maybe the academy is in person at first, maybe it's online, but I'm going to teach you about all the stuff about blockchain step by step. And I'm going to take you through like the best way I can teach you how it works and then how you build on it. And then, and we're going to have this kind of sandcastle mentality for the first few months. And we're going to build stuff, we're going to throw it away. We're going to build stuff with the idea that we're going to throw it away. Sure. And I'm going to pay you for those 3 months. I'm going to pay you $150K a month for those 3 months, or $150K a year for those 3 months.
Whoa, $150K a month. Well, sign me up for that.
That's a lot. Yeah.
That's a lot.
$150K a year for 3 months to just build interesting things and throw them away. And then after 3 to 6 months, we're going to transition to what are you actually providing to the ecosystem, and then everything, and then some kind of pilot program. And I'm sure people have tried this. I'm sure there's a lot of other things there. But sure. But to me, I think that like I was raised by public educators. My mom and my dad were both school teachers. Like they taught me how to, like, I feel like I'm a great teacher. I love to teach. That empathy thing that we talked about earlier in the Venn diagram of like people using, same thing as people like using the education you give them and being able to present them with the right education. So I would focus on basically like educating as many people as possible and getting as many people that are excited about it into it and being able to pay them right off the bat. Like maybe you start them on nights and weekends for a first few weeks or a month or 2 months. But eventually we need to be able to take a guy that is doing DevOps for a company that's 35 years old and pay him for the next 3 months if he's willing to make the jump to do this next level stuff. And that's tough. And it's certainly tough in the middle of winter. And that's kind of like something we can talk about too, the psychology of granting in the middle of winter.
Let's go one step further. Like hypothetically, how do we get there? Again, like we're playing a game here where there are no specific constraints on time or, well, I mean, we have constraints, I guess, but what can we do to move the needle and move one step closer, either you and I personally or people who are listening or kind of just us as an ecosystem to that sort of vision, which I think is a powerful vision?
Well, okay. So like, what are the education efforts right now? Let's audit those. Let's figure out who's teaching who and how well they're doing. If we're not doing a good job, if we don't have like a very, and you hate to use the word centralized, it's kind of a bad word, but if we don't have a centralized location,
we need so you're saying we need a Department of Education or a,
yes, we do.
Ministry of Education, basically.
Ministry. The ministry, I straight decree that we need a Ministry of Education.
Austin for Minister of Education. I like
That's right.
You heard it here first.
That's right.
Okay.
We need to basically provide the on-ramp for developers.
So where does the funding for that come from? That's kind of the key question here. If you were king, if you were emperor of Ethereum, if you could wave your magic wand, how would you like to see things work? Would you like to see some form of taxation, which is sort of pretty normal in the kind of default world? Would you like to see some other some other, I think I said modical, which I think was my brain's way of saying radical model of funding.
I was thinking monocle, which would be better, like a fat cat with a bunch of money and a monocle.
See?
Like, yeah, here you go. Yeah, you do that education thing, Sonny. Well, trust me, guy with monocle.
Yeah.
I'm going to double the value. There's like all boats will rise here. As more developers get into the space, more developers have all the tools they need. More developers have like a very mature tool set, ecosystem, people around them, everything all together. A lot of really neat things will be built. We know the technology is awesome. We know those Gnosis safe contracts are some of the most beautiful pieces of code we've ever seen written. We know like the idea, the yellow paper, the white, we know how great it is. We just don't have enough guys like us like hacking on this, doing really like great things. So I think we need to bring people in. There are lots of ideas, right? There are models where it's part of the protocol. Is that the best? We'll have to figure it out. How does that money go? Like, I think talking with Evan Van Ness about this, he has said that like if anybody, like basically all you have to do is start an argument and you can argue away putting it, like making it part of the protocol, which I totally agree. You can always find a reason not to. It's just like we have to figure out a way to do this first, and it's not going to be perfect, and we're going to need to iterate on it, which I think is kind of it's a theme of a lot of my talks with a lot of people, is like, it's not going to be perfect. We're going to have private keys and local storage. Oh my gosh. But we have to navigate that spectrum.
That's a great example.
Figure out like where it works and how we bring people on and how we make it work the best. And can we fund them with this? Can we fund them with that? What's the market cap of Ethereum right now? Like 30 B? Is it a B? 30 B billion?
There's a B and there's a bunch of zeros in front of it. And I think even this week it's gone up quite a bit because things are going nuts right now.
And if I cost 150K a year, there's a lot of
actually this is fun math to do. Like if you divide one Austin by the market cap of Ethereum, right? Yes. It's a very small number. I'm not smart enough to do that math in my head. I'm going to make a fool of it, try to get it right.
Calculator.
Yeah, do it. Right. So we're talking about like a percent of a percent. We're talking in basis points here, right?
Yes. I think I did. I think I did something wrong.
It's 0.00001. You know.
Like 0.15, I think, right? So 30 divided by 150, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it would be what, like 200,000 of me.
Okay, so you are
right?
So you in aggregate cost represent 1/200,000th of the market cap of Ethereum. Which another way of framing this is to say that Ethereum could hire 200,000 Austins, right? And then of course the other side of this, right, for 1 year. The other side of this equation is by what percentage would you? I mean, I know this is reductionist, right? But like increase the market cap of Ethereum, or what percentage of value could you bring, or this project you're describing bring to the ecosystem? Again, we will leave this as an exercise to the listener, but it is an educational exercise. So I want to close with two final questions. So this is your hot mic moment. Thank you, by the way, for this. It's been really fantastically fun.
Thank you for having me.
So the first is, you have the mic, right? What is the one message that you want to share with the Ethereum community, anyone who might be listening to this? Go.
Heads up, iterate. Like you gotta iterate. Don't like, I think that the ICO craze kind of drove this kind of mentality of, I'm gonna make this website with my list of advisors and my cool technology, and I'm gonna sell it, and I'm gonna 30 million ICO. Yeah. No, that's a bad kitty. That's a bad kitty. What we need to do is you need to iterate heads up. You need to come up with an idea, and you need to sort of foster the development around that idea and put something out there pretty quickly and see where it fits, see where you're reinventing the wheel. There's a good chance that someone else is doing something similar to it, and you just haven't crossed paths with them yet. And they probably have a very similar ethos to you. So if you are truly about building a better ecosystem, then this is going to be a home run for you, because you're going to have a lot of other people behind you. So go heads down, build something small, but then come back up for air regularly and interface with the rest of the ecosystem and get feedback. Put your app in the hands of users all the time and see where their thumbs go and see where their eyes go and see where you're failing and see where you're hitting a home run and iterate. So I think that like very iterative development, I think, is very important. And
That's pretty good.
The nerds. There's a lot of nerds out there that are probably underfunded, and we need to do a better job of getting them.
Fund the nerds. Okay, so maybe we have two hashtags. We have every human and we have fund the nerds. I kind of like both of those. That's amazing. Yeah. That's really, really, really good advice. That resonates. And
maybe the maxi stuff, right? Don't be a maxi.
Okay, don't be a maxi. Yeah. So yes, please don't be a maxi.
Right? Like if you truly want a decentralized world, it's not going to start there. Yeah. It's going to start by giving people nice ramps and nice, easy, like give them something that works and gives them a magic moment first. Let them create a narrative behind an account, and then teach them how to migrate that account and be more secure and be more decentralized.
Absolutely. Right. And I think your advice about not being a maxi here connects back to the point you're making about iteration, right? Like, I've said this many times that, you know, to imagine or think for a moment that like Ethereum in its present form is like, you know, the end state or like the best possible configuration of bits and bytes and protocol and stuff happening at layer 1, layer 2 is like kind of crazy. It's definitely easier to iterate at layer 2 than it is at layer 1, but we need to kind of maybe find ways to continue to iterate at both of those layers. Austin Griffith, Minister of Education for Ethereum. I would take your class.
I do decree.
Final question is,
okay,
what other teams or projects or people kind of in our ecosystem do you think that we should interview as part of this series? You're more than welcome to help out with that. And basically just who's doing great work that, you know, may be struggling with things like funding, like you have.
Well, so you put out a tweet and it blew up my notifications. So
I'm glad.
Like, let's look at that tweet first.
Sure,
like that,
sure.
There's a lot of great people posting a lot of great things there. They're like, even someone who's heads up staring at Twitter all day is already going to miss a ton of stuff within crypto Twitter in a single day.
Yeah.
So I have a huge blind spot where I think earlier in the space I was doing a better job paying attention. Now I'm not doing that as good of a job. I mean, obviously there's the bigs like the makers and the Gnosis, right? Like the Gnosis team has been one of the best people to interface with in the entire space for me.
Yep.
And they're wonderful, right? And then along like the quick payments and the payment channels and the L2 stuff that I'm working on, like Connects has been wonderful. Cool. The Connects technology there, I think someone talked about James Young and Abridged.
Yep.
The Flex Dapps dudes.
Yep.
There's so many, and man, I hate when someone asks me this question because there's like 10 people that I think of as soon as I hang up, and I'm like, oh man, they're gonna think I'm a dick for not bringing them in here. I'm saying, like, go to that tweet. That tweet is great. There's a lot of people there
for sure.
And honestly, I could probably list people for a long time. I won't do it justice, but there's a lot of people that I think those, like a $5K a month stipend from someone can go a long way.
Sure.
But Binance has given us a $5K that goes straight to the Burner Wallet Collective. Cool. That basically pays for bounties on Gitcoin. Have you had? This is the first one. You definitely have to have Kevin Owaki on. Right?
Oh, for sure. No, I mean, I agree. There were some amazing responses to that tweet, and I'll do my best to kind of work my way down that list. It's a very long list, and so I'm going to have to recruit people. We're going to have to go exponential here. We're going to have to get other people to help conduct these conversations.
So to add two cool projects.
This is the Genesis block, right? So let's just
this is it. This is it. Yeah. This is my Satoshi quote about the banks failing us, right? Yeah. Well, I want to, when we're talking about cool projects, I think there's a really cool subset of developers in a space that like basically think in assembly, like they wake up from a hot sweat, like the guys like Rick Moo, the like Remco, Zach from Aztec, like a lot of those guys would be good guys to talk to because they're not the everyman. I'm the everyman. I know when something, Richard Messer, whoever wrote the Gnosis Safe contracts too. These guys are really, you know, they're Vitalik level thinkers, right? And I would not claim that. Like I'm the Minister of Education. Like I
would also dub you the Minister of Usability, right? Which I think is like,
right.
It's a different part of the brain. It's more, you know, what is it? Right brain than left brain, or vice versa. I always get that backwards, but it's equal.
Yep. Yeah. So the everyman does decree that we still need to make sure that these high level assembly thinkers and all the guys working on ETH 2.0 and the like white blocks and chain safe guys that are doing the cool stuff with when we're talking about using a burner at an event. It's like, man, there's a lot of stuff there that could fall apart and a lot of security issues. It would be great if we could have almost like a mesh network that could talk to each other. There's a lot of really neat things that are coming together there that I'm excited about.
Me too. I think the future is bright for all.
It really is. It's so cool. I get goosebumps every time I use this technology.
Me too. I mean, that's what did they say? Like, came for the people, stayed for the tech, or I guess it could be the other way around too. But no, I mean, I get goosebumps too. I
gotta give props to Moloch and Metacartel. Both of those guys are great.
Yeah,
they're pushing forward like simplicity.
Maybe we need to evolve this into I had this blog post I wrote last year on like 12 reasons to be excited about Ethereum. I think maybe we need to do a follow up, but I think it's going to be a lot more than 12. I think you listed about 20 or 30 just now.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
I think we're going to see privacy. Right.
Yeah.
By the end of the year, we're going to basically see privacy on chain.
So shout out to,
but also
Aztec Aztec. Shout out also to Barry Whitehat, who's also doing exciting.
Oh yes.
Here. He did a great presentation here at ZCon a couple days ago. We could go on for hours, and we'll definitely come back and do another one.
And I know I forgot a million people. And
no, you can't name everyone. But let's
administer decrees his love. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, let's end this one here. Austin, this has been so much fun. Thank you for sharing your story and some of the work you're doing, and sharing your message for the community. And same bat time, same bat channel next week, I guess.
Thank you.
Thanks, Austin. I'll see you later. Thanks for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed speaking to Austin about his work. In a few days, we'll release episode 2 of Humans of Aetherium, which features an interview with Santiago Seri of the Democracy Earth Foundation. In the episode, Santiago tells us about the incredible work that he and his team are doing using platforms like Ethereum to build the future of democracy. This show is produced completely on a volunteer basis, using free, open, and permissively licensed content, including the audio and the video clip. However, I do want to give a quick shout out to Joseph McDade for making this fantastic audio available, and I'll include a link here to the show notes for folks who want to check out his other work. If you're interested in contributing to the Humans of Aetherium project, reach out on Twitter. More information in the show notes as well. Thanks so much, and see you in a few days.